All right, let's dive into Wicked today. Like, what if the Wicked Witch wasn't actually wicked? We're looking at Gregory Maguire's book, Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, alongside the OG, L. Frank Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Oh, and we can't forget the musical, right?
It's wild how Maguire flipped everything we thought we knew about Oz, you know? It's not just retelling the same story. It's like, whoa, what is good and evil even?
Yeah, exactly. You think you've got Oz figured out, and then Maguire's like, no. It makes you rethink everything, especially the Wicked Witch of the West. She's not just like some cackling green lady from the movie anymore.
Right.
Maguire gives us Elphaba, who is born with green skin, and that becomes this mark of prejudice.
Yeah.
She's isolated because of it.
It's really sad, her story. Even her own family is like, nah.
Yeah.
Her mom's distant. Her dad's this religious guy who thinks Elphaba's a curse.
Oh, wow.
So she's understandably bummed about the world.
Totally. And that feeling of being an outsider, like not fitting in, really shapes Elphaba's journey. She's super smart, really passionate, and has a strong sense of justice. But her experiences push her to the edge of society.
It's almost like she's like set up to become the Wicked Witch, even though she starts out fighting for good causes, especially for the animals of Oz.
Yeah, that's such a good point. The way Maguire portrays the animals in Oz, it's like a mirror to real-world oppression and discrimination. Elphaba sees how they're suffering, and she can't just ignore it.
She becomes their voice, right? The ones who can't speak up for themselves.
Exactly.
And that puts her right up against the wizard and all his messed up stuff. And this is where things really veer off from Baum's story.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. In The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the wizard is kind of this goofy but mostly harmless ruler. But Maguire, he gives us a whole different picture.
Oh, yeah, a completely different picture. In Wicked, the wizard is this power-hungry manipulator. He's totally faking it, hiding behind all this smoke and mirrors, literally. And this is huge for Elphaba, you know. She realizes that the supposed good guys, they aren't so good after all.
Right. It makes you question everything. And speaking of questioning things, we got to talk about Glinda, the Good Witch of the North. She is not the stereotypical bubbly blonde we're used to.
No, not at all. In Wicked, she's so much more complex.
Yeah.
She starts out as Elphaba's roommate at Shiz University, and their relationship is, well, let's just say it's complicated. They're like oil and water.
Total opposites, right?
Yeah.
Glinda's popular, privileged, and honestly pretty superficial at first.
Yeah.
And then there's Elphaba, the outcast, who sees right through all that.
Exactly. And yet things change between them. They challenge each other. In Glinda, she starts to get Elphaba's point of view.
But then there's Elphaba's sister, Nessarose. She ends up becoming the Wicked Witch of the East. She's really tragic.
Nessarose's story is so interesting because she grew up in Elphaba's shadow, always feeling like she wasn't enough. So it makes sense why she'd be easily manipulated and make some bad choices.
Wow.
Her becoming the Wicked Witch of the East comes from insecurity, love, and this need for power.
It just shows that even the characters who seem evil often have their own stories of hurt and loss.
Absolutely, yeah. It shows you that we need to look past just calling people good or evil and try to understand why they do what they do. Like Maguire's saying, hey, maybe green skin doesn't make you a bad witch.
So true. And we can't talk Wicked without the musical, right? It's
Yeah.
like they took all the complex stuff from the book, added amazing music, and boom, cultural phenomenon.
The musical really brings out the emotions, you know, friendship, defying expectations, all that. And Stephen Schwartz's music, the lyrics, genius. They
Yes.
totally capture the characters and story in this whole new way.
And defying gravity. Come on, iconic.
Yeah.
That moment when Elphaba embraces who she is and says, screw the rules to society.
Yeah,
When she rises up on stage like a silhouette against the moon. Chills.
every single time. And speaking of powerful symbols, we got to talk about the color green. It's not just Elphaba's skin color, you know? It's like everything she represents, everything society is afraid of, everything they reject.
Yeah, green becomes this like badge of honor. She's strong. She doesn't conform. And then there's Glinda, all bubblegum pink. Such a contrast.
That contrast is so in your face visually. At first, it's like, okay, they're opposites. Popular bubbly blonde versus misunderstood green outcast. But as they, you know, grow closer, it becomes less about being opposite and more about how cool it is to be different. Finding common ground even when you're not alike.
And the musical gives Glinda so much more depth than the book does.
Yeah.
She's not just this like one-dimensional goody-goody.
Right. She's not. In the musical, Glinda starts out kind of shallow, wrapped up in herself, but she really changes.
Yeah.
She learns from Elphaba. She faces her own biases. She becomes a more caring leader. She even puts her own rep on the line to help Elphaba, which is Wow, totally different from Wizard of Oz, Glinda.
Their friendship is the heart of the musical. It's messy, complicated, but really powerful.
Mm.
It's about finding connection in the weirdest places and accepting each other, flaws and all.
And that message, right, accepting each other, embracing our differences, that's what people connect with. That's what makes Wicked more than just a retelling. It's about who you are, friendship, and shaking things up.
So we've got the book, the musical, all the twists they add to Oz. What's the big takeaway? Why is Wicked still so huge after all these years?
It's because Wicked gets at something we all feel, wanting to be understood, wanting to belong, fighting for what's right, even when it seems like the whole world's against you.
Yeah.
It's about questioning what you think you know, looking deeper than the surface, and realizing that good and evil, it's not that simple.
And in a world where it feels like everyone's fighting, that message of empathy, trying to understand each other, that's more important than ever.
Totally. Wicked tells us to see things from different sides, to question the stories we're told, and to be brave enough to write our own.
Like seeing the world in shades of green, not just black and white.
Exactly. Wicked says, hey, there's always more to the story. Magic can be found where you least expect it, and sometimes the coolest, most insightful things come from embracing what makes us different. And it reminds us that stories are powerful, you know? Like, the narratives we make up, they can totally shape how we see things.
Oh, for sure.
They can change what we believe, even, like, affect our lives, the direction we go in.
It's pretty amazing how Wicked, like, changed the whole Oz thing for, like, a generation.
Mm-hmm.
We thought we knew the story, then bam, Maguire comes in with all these new meanings and layers and complexity.
It shows how awesome storytelling is, you know? Like, taking an old tale and making it new so we understand ourselves and the world better.
It's not just retelling, it's reclaiming the story.
Yeah.
In Baum's book, the Wicked Witch is just evil,
Yeah.
no depth. But Maguire gives her a voice, her history, feelings.
Totally.
We see the world through her eyes, get her pain, her anger, why she does what she does.
It's such a good example of how literature can be like, hey, maybe you're wrong about stuff, you know?
Right.
Like, question those labels we slap on people and situations.
And that's what makes Wicked so thought-provoking. It stays with you.
Yeah.
It's not just fantasy. It's like us, our
Yeah.
struggles, our messiness.
So true.
So as we wrap up our Wicked deep dive, what stands out to you? What really hit home while we were looking at these different takes on Oz?
I think it's that we all have good and bad inside us.
Oh, interesting.
It's about the choices we make, the paths we take, how everything we go through shapes who we become. Wicked is like, hey, there's no such thing as a perfect hero or a totally evil villain. We're all mixed up, light and dark.
And maybe, just maybe, there's a little Elphaba in all of us.
Maybe.
That wanting to be accepted, to be different, that fight between fitting in and being who you truly are.
It's a good question, isn't it? What would we do if we were Elphaba? Facing all that prejudice, people betraying her, the temptation of power.
Right. Would we defy gravity, embrace our own wickedness,
Yeah.
or try to fit into a world that doesn't want us?
Tough question, no easy answers. But Wicked makes us think about it.
And that's what I love about this story. It doesn't give you easy answers or neat little morals. It makes you think for yourself, question your assumptions, embrace the fact that life is complicated.
Absolutely.
So whether you're a Wicked pro or just starting out, check out the book, the musical, both. Really dive into these ideas.
Yeah.
Because there's always something new to find, something to think about, a different way of seeing things.
And who knows, you might find some wickedly good inspiration along the way.